is I will start recording this session. So, and these days we are going to look into the color exploration for week module 2. And let's share the slide. Okay, everyone can see the slide? Yeah? Okay, good. So color exploration week module 2. And let's start to see what is on the agenda, or what we are going to look into a bit more in detail. And the first topic that we're going to discuss is not discuss, but investigate a bit more in depth, is color psychology. We'll see how the color affect our thinking, the human people, and then we'll jump into color schemes. Now, we have seen color scheme and color palettes in the previous lecture, but this time around we are going to see applied to an environment, to a space. So we'll see that the theory is going to be translated into a more practical, into a space, into the ambient. And the last topic, we're going to see how the color, it actually manipulate the perception of the space. So these are all very practical samples that we're going to investigate in this lecture. And you should be able to as well refer with the previous section, because previously we just touched base on the theory, and now we see how actually the theory applies in real life, in a real case scenario. Now, a few color facts that we really need to consider is the only percentage of a person, for instance, both women and men, have some form of color vision deficiency. So we think that, we see the color and everyone see how we saw the color, and it actually is not properly correct. So always remember the color, they do affect how individual see the color and how we perceive it. For instance, when we get older, the retina of the pupil is always not functioning as it used to be. So therefore, the color perception that we have starts to fade. So we see the color in a less bright or saturated manner as we get older. And that's where, for instance, when we need to design for older people, we really need to have a very high contrast color. So tonal value, for instance, will not be as perceptible to older people like a young person. Also, our brain have a poor color memory, so we really don't remember coloring specific as, like for instance, a sign or a picture. So we have difficulty to remember the tonal value or a specific hue of a color. So if we describe a red, we can have an idea of the red, but we can really not remember, pinpoint what's the saturation or tonal value of the red. Now, we also need to consider the colorblind people, for instance, they perceive the color differently. So they don't see all of the wide spectrum of the color, of the color wheel. So this is some form of sample where they only see a kind of duochromatic or trichromatic view of the world. Is in a way they don't have the wide spectrum of the magenta, the very vibrancy of the red, the yellow. So they see the kind of a duotone. And again, as we go, we grow older, our eyes get tired very easily, and they pretty much affect how we perceive the color. So remember, color, they are quite, although they are very scientific, because you can always break down the quantity of a color, it really affects differently for different people. So, like for instance, as in kind of the statistic, 1 in 255 women has a color vision deficiency, and it's much higher in men, for instance. The other things that we want to consider is it always good to select a color on a white background, and always good to look at a color scheme in a very good natural lighting. Now, why on the white background and why on the lighting? Because as we have seen from the previous session, if we put, like for instance, a red color on the green background, then we will really not define the right hue of the red, because it has a really high contrast with the green and will alter our perception of the color or the hue, which is the saturation of the red. So always recommended to, when you choose a color, especially painting or textile fabric, always choose in a very good natural lighting environment and have a very good white background against white background. Is almost the white eliminate all of the different alteration that we might have of the perception. So kind of rule of thumb, always use your white background. Now let's have a look at color psychology and how does it affect color and how does it affect our perception. Now, this is also depends quite a lot from the different cultures around the globe. For instance, there is a lots of symbolism associated with color, and it contrasts from country to country. So, for instance, in a funeral setting in our Western world, and attached as well to religious connotations, black is used as a color to mourn the loss of a person. Whereas, for instance, in Asia or in specifically in China, the use of white it indicates a good luck to the passing away of the person. So white is seen as a form of good luck for the person passing away to the next realm. And as you can see, the association with white and black in the case of the funeral is very, very linked to the cultural and religious values that each nation has it. So if you need to design for Asian, for instance, you will need to understand how the color affect, or how the color is perceived in a social context. So a good research is always recommended when you deal with a culture that is not from your own natural country where you have grown up or studied or worked. So symbolism is very important. Color associated with as a symbol. Now, if we look at yellow in our Western culture, for instance, is always in reference to joy, sunshine, energy, happiness, positivity. And study has shown that the meaning of the color yellow is associated with warmth, cheerfulness, increase in mental activity, happiness, increase with muscle energy. It associates also with activating the memory and encourage communicating across people and enhance the vision, building confidence and stimulate the nervous system. So it's a color that has a high level of frequency or vibrancy because it's also associated with the sun. So when you look at the sun, for instance, there is this very bright yellow glow that actually we refer to, we relate to. And for instance, in the picture that we have shown in the sample, we have this very neutral room, and then we have this touch of yellow on the textile with the canvas on the wall. And they actually give a very warm and happy, welcoming background place to be, because there is the color palette that we're actually looking at is very warm. There is the yellow, there is the kind of orange of the lighting, and there is the really nice warm earth of the carpet and the wooden texture of the bed. And again, you can see the brownish, there is some yellowish vein into it. So it's a very positive and happy, full of energy color that we associate psychologically. Now, one small parenthesis while we're talking about color psychology is always refer color back to nature. So that's kind of a percentage that we look into it. Always look at the nature and look at what kind of color nature actually use, and they see how how you feel about looking this color into the nature. Now, what are the cultural considerations that we might want to consider or take in consideration? Like, for instance, in Latin America, and as well in the Middle East or in Egypt, yellow is associated with death and mourning. For some reason, there is this very strong association of the yellow. Especially strong in Egypt because there is all the historic of the empire of the pharaohs. The yellow has been using as the lighting of the next life. The sun, the goddess. So that's where, for instance, strongly in Egypt, yellow is really cultural associated with the passing away, with the mourning, with the afterlife. In Asian nation, for instance, it is seen as a sacred color, and that's to do with the different religions, like the Hindu religions and the Buddhist religions. These are all to do with with nature, linked back to the nature, and sun is always kind of a sacred symbol because it provides life as well. Whereas here in Australia, we relate yellow back to warm sunshine, the yellow cab, for instance, that's as well in New York. So Australia is all from a British cultural heritage, then we have that different association. So you see, if we design for the Middle East, Latin and Asian, and Western culture, there is this cultural consideration that you might want to look into it. Okay, it's always good to say, okay, where I'm going to use it. Now, in the sample we provide, the yellow, for instance, is being toned down. That gives a space of much more brighter and elegant feeling to it. So we use the tone of the hue of yellow to provide or emphasize the a bit more brighter ambient. So when you use it on the wall, that kind of a tint of a yellow, it brightened up the whole room as a consequence in our in our culture. Now the orange is as a yellow because it's analog, or it's close to the to the yellow hue. Again, it's looking to vitality, endurance, warmth, fun, autumn. That's to do for the, again, if you go in Europe, you see these beautiful orange trees by the leaves because they change color. A bit less, we don't really see that color here in Australia because we don't have as defined 4 seasons as we have in Europe. Maybe on the hills of Adelaide, you can see there the beautiful orange leaves from the tree. And it's what we call of the poppies color. And what we want to see, we use orange in an environment to just bring that extra power into the place, that extra vibrancy. It's sometimes used as a status symbol, especially in the design community. We use the orange as a trend color. Specifically if we use with the gray tonal natural value or use with the black, very strong contrast with the orange. So orange is a color they use kind of to pop into the environment. You can have furniture, furnishing, or a textile, and then gives you a statement into the room that you want to create. So it really pop out from the environment. It makes a statement. You say, I'm here to stay. It is a color that shows as well confidence. It doesn't overwhelm you or overpower like a red or a red brownish does, but it's very young, vibrant, energetic. So it's used a lot in fashion, for instance, to give those really vibrancy and energetic ambient to it. The cultural consideration, again, there is many. Netherlands is used as a national color, so lots of Netherlands design use orange as a primary color to define their identity, their national identity. It is very sacred in the Hinduism and as well in Buddhism. Like, for instance, you will see a lot of Buddhist monk with the orange robe, and there is a statement. And again, is a symbol of the sun, of the power, of the infinite, of life. And also in Colombia is represent or express sexuality and fertility. Again, it links back to the power of the sun, to the energy of the different tones of the sun. This is bright orange you can see in the sky, or the orange on the sunset is very powerful, is enriching the whole landscape. And in the Eastern culture, orange symbolize love, happiness, humility. It links back to the Hinduism and the Buddhism, and as well as good health. And again, as we've seen, the Buddhist monks use orange as a symbol as well of humility. And what is interesting on the sample that we see on the right is with the different tones of the orange, we create a very dramatic and warm interior. So that's where you can see in the retail quite a lot of orange being used, because it's really attract people inside the environment. Is welcoming, is vibrant, is energetic. It gives you a good mood, it gives a good feeling. So you might test it out if you want to have brighten out your kitchen, for instance. Orange is a very beautiful color that you can use it, and you will have a sense of very happy kitchen for a family or for couple life. Now, red, very strong. I think it's one of the strongest color, more powerful color, and has kind of a dual meaning to it. It means action, it means energy, it means courage, it means excitement, it means passion, but also it means power. Your blood is red. So red is also used in a very negative, has a lots of negative connotation as well, because it's the symbol of life in a human being. So it also grabs a lot of attention because her hue is the most energetic and vibrant of all of the spectrum, and is high energy, encourage confidence. That's to do with power. Like, for instance, you see in this day Trump's president of the United States of America, or the Labour Party, for instance, here in Australia, they use red color because it's power, is passion, is is I am, is what they call the color they established the I am verbs to it, and also is a very sexual color. For instance, the red lipstick, it make a statement for a woman. So everything they use red has a connotation of power, of making a statement, like the red tie the politician they are wearing these days. It is because of this really deep connotation, cultural connotation. Now, it's very popular. I wouldn't necessarily agree that it's used. It's very popular to use in a bedroom, unless it's more of a commercial. For instance, a showroom. it wouldn't be used a lot in a residential, for instance, to design for a clients, because it will not really relax. Having a red bed with the red texture will not be a relaxing and experience when you need to sleep or rest, for instance. So, again, evokes also feelings of romance and passion. And for instance, you will see a lot of, in Spanish culture, red is a very powerful color used for the bullfighting, for instance, the flag used on the corrida. So you see there is a lot of a dual connotation of the red. Now, again, we've just touched base on the cultural consideration. Again, in Asia, China is considered very lucky. They also have their national flag, which is red in China. Long life, and etc. And as well as is used a lot in politics. Communist Party is red, Labour Party is red, for instance, in Australia. And the red stripe of the American flag. So it's used a lot as political nationalism, and as well connotation with the sun, with life, with blood. Now, on the interior space, for instance, we also use red as to create a focal point in an area. For instance, this beautiful picture that we have it, that red is actually break down the space into a very two-defined area. There is the kitchen and there is the living. So because it's a quite a big open space, then the designer thought to use red as to define the living room into this open space. So you can clearly see that the sofa, it becomes the central focus on the room and the room. So for instance, if it was yellow, it will have a different perception, or if it would have brown, it would be a bit more, a bit more muddy. But red, it really makes a statement, especially on a dark floor on the white wall. Now, blue, again, it links back to youth, spirituality. That's to do with the skies, with the air, serenity, logic, peace, the ocean, and therefore it gives you a sense of calm. You go to the ocean to have this really nice, calm, and peaceful atmosphere, that serene sky that we see, the beautiful, especially here in Australia, we have a beautiful, serene blue sky that, for instance, in Europe, we don't have it. And it also is also associated with intelligence. So blue is a kind of a very intelligent color, because it can be used in different scenarios, in different circumstances. And also is associated with luxury. So beautiful blue sofa is very luxurious to sit on it. It's kind of the king and queen function that you have it. Now, lots of people like the blue color, that because of the above connotations, and also has a very broad appeal. And although it's considered not to be non-specific, but it's also associated with a male. Newborn use kind of a blue, whereas newborn baby male use blue, whereas newborn female use a pink. So sometimes it's quite specific, even if the lecture said otherwise. But a sense of symbolizes well trust, loyalty, wisdom, faith, and confidence, is because it doesn't have the strong energy as the yellow, orange, or blue use of color. So it's kind of a color that embrace the sky and embrace the ocean, and therefore is what feels us secure through back to the nature. Now, what are the cultural considerations in it? Well, because of the before mentioned qualities, it also used in the branding in the corporate. Like for instance, there is lots of blue using the logo for finance. You know, Citibank logo is blue, the ANZ logo is blue, for instance. So lots of branded company, financial company, where they need to symbolize trust, they use blue. Finance is full of blue logos, for instance. Whereas in the Middle East, has a more religious spiritual connotation, which refers to the heaven and spirituality. Then again, in the Middle East, we have the Islam religion, and therefore Islam, there is this concept of the heaven, and the heaven, they actually are placed like in Christianity above the sky, and therefore that's where blue is associated with spirituality as well, not only in the Middle East, but as well in the Christian religion. Whereas in the Eastern country, we associate that with immortality. So there again. Now, we also use the blue, for instance, you know, something to create very luxurious, you know, like for instance, this sample of the dining room, you can see this blue, which is quite an aquamarine tone. It gives a sense of you know, luxurious downtown, but at the same time a very calm space, a very, very sober mood, kind of, you know, make a statement that very turquoise aquamarine. And what is interesting is emphasize the beautiful decoration of the chimney, which has the beautiful decorations on it. And again, there is a very interesting application of the blue color that we have it. Green again is like a blue, is associated very much with the well-being, with the forest, with the nature, with life, you know, the tree, with calmness, balance, fertility, rest. Again, really one of these colors that it really cool down, calms you down, relax you down, because it's the color of nature. And particularly the vegetation, the land, the trees, the forest, the greenery. And as a result, because there is this flourish of life into the forest, it's linked with the well-being. And as a result, it is a very relaxing view. We associate back to the experience of walking through the forest, and it's very relaxing. So you have these, you know, different beautiful hues of green and tone of green, and that's where lots of green color is being used for representing ecology, and as well for peace. You know, so Greenpeace, for instance, they use not only the color, but as well the word. And it's kind of becoming very popular color for this quality they have to it. Now, in this room, for instance, we see that the green is used for the wall with the different tones of it in the decoration of the frames, and as well some of the furnishing. And although they, you know, you might argue about the style, but after all, it's a very relaxing tonal or color palette, color scheme in there, especially with the use of the white and nothing else. Culturally, we can is associated with you know, the environment, and therefore a very healthy products and idea. It also intellectually is you know, associated with greed and jealousy. You know, that's kind of popular from the popular culture. If you have to draw someone which is greed or jealousy, you always use the green color, just to emphasize the very acidity almost represent to it. And also because, like for instance, the lime is green, so the color is also associated with taste, and therefore that's where does come that reference to greed and jealousy, because we only associate not only with the with the view, but as well with the taste, color with the taste. And whereas in Islam, it always represents luck and wealth. Honestly, not sure why that. Investigate, maybe you know better than I in this case. And again, you use with the symbol of infidelity. Interesting. In Islam, if you see the United Arabs flags or nation, they used green in their flag, in their national flag, and that's because of the luck and the wealth they have. Now, on the sample, the picture, what is really fascinating in here is actually the use of this green behind the dining table, and they give you a very sense of young and dynamic and good feeling of the environment using the very forest green. Again, we use the color in a very, in a very touch base on the property. Now, purple is kind of, again, like the red, because purple also is secondary color made by the blue and the red. It just adds a sense of magic and royalty and mystery and spirituality and luxury, and is opulent. So there is lots of psychological associated with the purple. Whereas the red is a very primary color, purple is a secondary color, and therefore has a more psychological connotation to it. So many see it as a friendly color, but others see it as a wealth, power, creativity. Like for instance, in popular culture, Prince, the rock star, used purple rain as a very powerful symbol of royalty and luxury and opulent. But also sometimes it calms the nervous. It depends how you use it, and somehow is associated with the royalty. And lots of performance artists use the purple as their main color. Now, for instance, lots of nightclub or evening plays, they use lots of purple furnishing or purple color. That gives you a sense of depth to the place, and you feel kind of sense of opulence into it. So watch out how it's been used. If you use it very nicely, it works quite effectively. Now, as we have seen the use from the royalty, lots purple using robes and cloaks. For instance, the bishops and the clergy and the Christian, they use a purple robe to it, so it has a very depth into it. And somehow in Thailand, because it's a different religious connotation, they use for a mourning and loss to it. So again, use it in a very diluted and tone manner. It can give you a really nice feeling, like for instance in the bedroom in here, you see in the picture. This kind of tonal pinks and purple-like color. There is the adding of white to it, so it becomes a very diluted, pleasant experience to use that. Black is, again, is kind of not really a color, but is considered to be used in popular culture as a color. And again, it is considered to be prestigious, professional, sexy, very formal and glamorous and sophisticated at the same time. And has this association of positive and negative influence. And sometimes is really used in a very sparingly way in the interior, because it can work marvel or it can be very daunting places. So we can see in this interior is a very good fine balance. They use the black in contrast with the white, and so it defines a very luxurious space, and at the same time it gives you a very elegant, chic, and sophisticated use of the black as a color in the environment. So if used properly, it's really, really good to have it. And look at this picture, for instance. It's interesting that the black wool is actually used just where there is the window. So is bouncing the light on the wall, and therefore is very effective. What are the cultural consideration in here? We have sometimes has a negative connotations, like a black humor, the black death, the black hole, the black race. So whatever is with black, there is a negative associated to it. That's because of the night, the unknown. If you walk into the dark night, you never know what comes out. So these are also associated with fears, with not knowing. And again, for that reason, because of the death associated to it, there is this sense of grieving. And so it's a symbol of grief in the Western culture. And whereas in the Middle East, it represents both rebirth and mourning. Now, Africa, which is a different culture from the other country, it symbolizes instead ages, maturity, masculinity. So in Africa, it has a more positive connotation. So that's to do with, again, to the race and to the culture of the people of the land. Now in this sample, for instance, we see that matte black, it gives a sense of a more masculine, sober feeling, that mainly because you use in a room where there is not much light, and therefore has a very sober tone to it. White on the contrast, psychologically, is being used as purity and innocence and virginity, hygiene, cleanliness. So white is the absence of all of the other color in reality, and therefore is a pure color because there is no any contamination of any other hues. So that's why we look at other color on the white background, because we can see the true value of the other hues of the other color. So it also helps with the reflections, and in effect, it reflects the full force of the spectrum into our eyes. And a white interior, we always give a very sense of airiness, spaciousness, cleanness, and then freshness. And this picture is a beautiful sample where we can see that the white emphasizes the openness of the room, and therefore you have lots of reflection of the light coming through the window, bouncing to the wall and back to the floor, and so have this marvelous, luminous, huge space thanks to the use of the white. And therefore it's kind of very spacious, like the view you see out of the window in an open space. Now that's again is due to a cultural and religious association. For instance, the white brides in China and Korea, on the other hand, represent the mourning of the death and bad luck. So it is worn as a funeral, we have seen previously. And an interesting period, it is associated with white is associated with angels or positive being. And they usually depicting wearing white. Why? Because it's the color of the light. So if you need to represent the light, then white is the color of the light. And again, we see in the picture, this white wall, it really open up the room into the open space that you see from the window. So it's really open up the wall. Now we also need to consider that this color used by the tone, they create the neutrality, and therefore because they are neutral, they are a tint to it, they're not primary or secondary or tertiary color, they give a sense of security, maturity, and reliability and warmth. They don't have a specific color tendency. So neutral are always calming, soothing, reassuring, and they're used a lot into the interior environment. So that's where we have a lots of natural colors in the wall or natural color in the furniture, like a off-white color. This is a very good sample. And they always very earthy, or such as brownish, or kind of organic, like the greenery tone of green. This what we call off-white color, they are natural, and they always have a tint of yellowish, greenish, bluish, and they are natural. So they give a sense of reliability, again, security and warmth through it. Now, this is kind of a quote, quite important, famous, and it's say, when using bright color, it's very important to mix it with textiles such as linen, hessian, or sizzling natural colors. There really is a fine line. If you use too much color with too few natural elements, the result will be unattractive, fairly floss, messy, and really is like making a cake. Too much or too little of one ingredient can spoil the whole thing. The incorporation of natural colors and textures provides a much needed grounding to the multitude of colors I tend to use. So in a nutshell, what she says, using the colors in an environment is always a mixing balance between primary color and natural color, between hard surface and the materiality of the texture. So trying to see color through as well the material and use a balance a bit of everything without overpowering one or the other. And that's where we kind of get back to the tones. Always remember the tones. If you have a primary color like this, this purple, you can use just the tones of the purple in the surrounding object, for instance, or in the surrounding textile, or in the surrounding wall. So always remember the tone. It really brings your color scheme into a more full space. Now, having a look at the kind of color psychology, we also really need to consider the contrast. So with a natural palette, we also need to consider the contrast between light and dark. Always use color in a very contrast manner. For instance, the two brown and purple on that blue background, it doesn't really help to create enough contrast as you might have it on a yellow background, and therefore you might end up to have a dull environment if don't use properly enough balance with the color. So if I use the brownish and purple on a blue floor, then it will be pretty much a dull experience walking it because there is not enough contrast. And that's, for instance, a very dark floor with a light wall. It works marvel because it works very in contrast. So there is enough vibrancy to make the ambient a very high energized ambient. So it creates a kind of good contrast. We can see where is the wall, we can see where is the floor. We can identify very clearly the element in that space. And therefore we can engage in a more meaningful aspect the environment. Now again, watch out for the quantity, and that means how much contrast you use in a space. If it's too much, it's overpowering. If you do it right in a very meaningful and just touch manner, then it works really well, as in the sample that we've seen of these two pictures. Now, we quickly have a look at the basic color scheme. So when we design an environment, we always need to decide what kind of color scheme we use. So we can use what we call a monochromatic, which is from the single hue of the color that we have it through tones and tint. That again is from the the darker tones through the lighter tones. Therefore, we can create this monochromatic scheme. Now, that is very warming and welcoming. It's not frightening environment, so it's really nicely balanced sense of the space. So you have the monochromatic scheme through the furnishing, the wall, paint of the wall, and as well of the furniture. Like for instance, we have the wooden desk, which is kind of a brownish, and then we have the beautiful orange, orangey yellowish textile of the sofa, and so on. We also have the analogs or related color scheme. That means they are close to each other. So the purple, the red, and the orange, they are analogs because they are connected, or they are the next door color to the primary color. And in this case, we can see that we have a very high level of vibrancy in the environment because we kind of integrate more color, more energy into our color scheme. So it's a very powerful environment that can be used quite nicely in the retail or in the commercial on the commercial sector. You can see the purple curtains and the very red desk and the orange accessory to it. Now, complementary is the color opposite to the color wheel. So the blue is complementary to the orange. And sometimes we just use it just for a few elements. So just to create the very strong opposite contrast, to create more vibrancy, to break the monotone or monochromatic color scheme. So in this case, we use it just in the accessory. Now, I could have used the nice blue, electric blue for a vase, for instance, or like they have using the carpet. So that is a very successful complementary scheme that we can see. If we don't have that blue, everything will be a bit dull, a bit monotonous to it. But with the complementary scheme, it works quite marvelous. We can also use what we call a split complementary. So we can use that third color. And this is a combination of hue of two color adjacent to its complement. Again, see how it has been used. So we have that very bright orange wool, quite quite powerful, and just a touch of the blue for the furniture. Not too much, but it creates a nice balance. It breaks down the space in a very interesting and vibrant manner. Now, triad as well is a split complementary. It just creates more contrast in the hue. And again, as the previous one, it used three color. And we use this, equally spaced, so there is the same tonal value. And this is this kind of we use a lot in the 80s, a bit less these days. So it's always kind of in relation to the pop art. So there is a lots of tried use of color. Again, refer to the art style. But you can see the electric blue, the pure yellow, and the red. use a lot in pop culture. Now, accented is kind of just a touch of color in a neutral or monochromatic environment. So in this picture, we have lots of neutral gray color scheme. And then we just accented with a primary color, like a yellows or orange, and the sky blue, to just break the neutrality. And that usually is with the accessories. Or you might have it in the furnishing of the room. But you can see the room in the overall. Now, when we're talking about room, we're talking about furnitures, we're talking about wall, we're talking about floor. And it's actually divided in two categories: the hardware of the room and the software of the room. And the hardware is actually the constructional element: floor, walls, and ceiling, whereas the software is actually the furnishing, the furnitures, and the accessories that you use it. So you have two strong elements that you work with the color. So you might have the hardware very neutral, and then you use your software for bring the color into your decoration, into your room. So in summary, in a nutshell, what we can say is they always play with the rule. And as we can see in this sample, is a very nice balanced way to, to furnish a room in a very nice, energized, well-balanced manner through the rules that we have just going through. We have seen it. Again, there is a nice balance of vibrancy, cool color palettes of the bluish, dark furnishing contrast with the white, and so on. Now, let's have a look at color versus space now. What does it mean is always see how the color affect the space. So how do we make, if we use the color not nicely, then we make a room feel smaller. For instance, dark painted wall will appear closer to each other. The same principle will apply to the floor and ceiling, and a room with many contrasting color will appear smaller than a room with color of a similar tone. So again, if we use the color in a not very wise manner, then we might have a different result than we supposed to have it. That, for instance, is kind of a very overcrowded with a lots of contrasting color, lots of element, and though this actually is a big room, but because the color has been used in a very not logical and rational manner, we have that sense, and then there is so many things happening, so much contrast in the furnishing, that bright yellow, which is kind of almost overkill by the canvas of the painting, and so on. So there's a very bad sample of an interior design that hasn't been successfully done, although having a very special luminous room. So what are the tips is use dark or bright warm color to obtain a kind of aerated feel. Choose small and lightweight pieces of furniture, and since they use contrast, in this case we have the nice dark black color, but is used close to a window, therefore is not really black. It becomes, because it's used to a very strong source of light, it shows a different tones of black. It becomes kind of bluish, and it becomes a very nice this tonal value, and it breaks the room into the floor, which bounces the light from the window, and it creates that nice of beautiful contrast that we have it. So again, color always use it with where the light source is. If we want to make a room feel bigger, we basically do everything the opposite on the previous side. So we make the wall and floor which use a much lighted color, so they open up the sense of the space. Again, use light object like a vase, glass vase, a very warm lighted sofa furnishing. And again, in this room, we also use the linearity or the mirror to bounce back the light. And you can see how open up the room. And as well, the layout affects how the color plays into the room. In this case, we have this huge mirror that expand the sense of the dimension. And you can see the furnishing and the two armchair place mirroring each other using a very light source fabrics, and then a touch of a warm color to bring a bit color. And the fireplace is mirror the choice of the orange of the furnishing being used. And again, a bit of a contrast with the black of the frames of the mirror and the black of the floor. It really works nicely because you have the huge windows that create the light and the contrast to it. Now, how do we actually, one of the things that people do at the time and we don't really recommend is actually making the room feeling lower, is when we start to paint the ceiling in a very dark color or having a very heavy carpets or texture on the floor, and they will really shrink the sense of the height of the room, and as well, using high furnishing or furniture in the room, and they will really kill or suffocate. Will give you a sense of suffocation in the room because the ceiling and the floor will pretty much mirror each other, and you don't have that sense of openness on your horizontal, on your ground, and on your ceiling. And therefore, if you use dark color on the surface, on the floor and on the ceiling, that will really shrink the sense. And like, for instance, this bunker or this underground, it looks like a cave, and that's where you have that horrible ceiling in black. It really does the different effect and really push the whole ceiling down to the ground, to the floor. And then we have that really rich carpet. Like, it's supposed to provide a sense of comfort, perhaps on a touch base of the feet of the feeling, but visually it becomes really, really oppressing. Everything is crashing down. So this is not a very good sample of very well solved use of color into the furnishing of the room. So how do we make a room feel higher then? Then we use a lots of verticality. We use a lots of stripe, for instance, can be used to add that sense of linearity towards the ceiling. We also use a very wide ceiling, and we use as well very neutral, warm color for the flooring. And then we use a really nice, just use a touch of color in your accessory to give a good vibrancy. And then you will have that room feeling of power, feeling of highness. It's a really nice to sample to it. And in here we kind of see another way to make the room feel higher is the counter ceiling. And that's used to give a sense of higher up when you don't have enough space, or you want to provide more sense of a space to your ceiling. You do a counter ceiling and you use the lighting as well embedded into it, and that sense of more spaciousness to, for instance, in your bedroom. Again, making the room feel larger. We use the same principle with making the room higher. So we use panels on the wall, and using again neutral color as well. Use lighting on the wall, and use lots of horizontal line, like for instance the floorboard on the our layout in a very horizontal line, so they enlarge the width of the space to emphasize the length of and property of the space. So again, light or neutral. And here we see a very beautiful sample of horizontal colors used on the wall, successfully using this bathroom. And you can see how the beams of the ceiling has been used in contrast with the white ceiling, and mirror on the floor to give that sense of widening the room. So again, he's using a contrast of color and painting and elements to it. Now let's have a look at the color in the environment. How does it affect? Well, we have to consider the temperature that affects the color in the environment. For instance, if we have a sea or ocean front view, then in summer vacation house, then we use lots of cold or cool color, because to cool down the sense of the really hot temperature that there is outside, so we use lots of cool color like bluish and purple and natural gray. That give a sense of coolness. It's really hot, it's really summery, it's really humid. So you walk into this room which is decorated with this tunnel of blues and cool and aquamarine. So that gives you a sense of coolness in a very hot environment. Or we use a dark color like a brownish, or this middle tone color like a green or middle tone bluish, because they color absorb a lots of light, and therefore it suffuse that sense of hotness of a really warm summer. Like for instance, if you go in the Middle East, in Morocco, you have all of this middle of the range tone inside the house, because they absorb the very brightness of the light. So all of the country, they are on the equatorial line. Then they use, like for instance, Mexico, they use lots of middle tone color, because they absorb the light, and therefore they give a sense of less vibrancy from the outside power of the sun. Now remember the environment of the lighting. So the way color is perceived in a space is always influenced by the type or quality of light. So when you walk into a room, always look what kind of light you have in the room. If it is a windows, how big the window it is, where does it face? Is facing north, or is facing east, or is facing west? Because that depends from the sun where it rises. Or if you use lots of artificial light against lots of natural light, what's the light temperature, and what kind of material you want to use, so the material absorbs the light, and therefore that actually is affect how you use the finishes and what kind of surface you use of the material, and therefore how they use in your color. Now, light temperature you also measure in Kelvin, and that means we have a warm light temperature and we have a cold light temperature. For instance, 5000 Kelvin is cold and 3000 Kelvin is actually warm. And you can see the difference on the sample. So if it's a really bright 5000 Kelvin light, like artificial light, then we have a very cold cold light. Whereas if it's a warm Kelvin light, then we have a more warm tone of the hues. Okay, so they kind of give you to the left the artificial light and provide to the sample to the right more a natural or a sunlight. That's how does it affect your materials and your color in the room. Now, test color with light. Always use light as a source of testing your color. Never look at the book. Always test in the real environment. And look as well the property of the object. So the reflectivity, for instance, how the light reflects the material of your object. So it can be, a very gloss finish or a matte finish. So a gloss finish, it reflects a lot of the light, so it bounces a lot, and therefore your object, your materiality is very saturated in the use of color. Whereas if it absorbs, it reflects less the light, so you want to have a matte finish. So if I have a bright room and I put lots of gloss finish on the wall or on the floor or even in the furniture, as soon as you walk in, I have this light that is bouncing off the surface all the time. And I'll go in that and get almost drunk and dizzy because there is so much light into it. And therefore, the best way to use the material is to have a material with a very absorbing quality of matte finishing in the texture. That can be even in your textile, that can be even in your tile, and even in your furniture material. Now, if we see, for instance, in the textile, like the curtain, then we have the sheer and the velvet and the silk, and they do reflect the light much, much differently. So you might think that your curtain making silk, it looks nice, and then you put on the place and they are too shiny, and therefore you might want to realize, oops, really need to change it. So again, how do we start? Always start from your light source and then work your way around on the property of your material and the reflectivity of the light. So natural light orientation, that's what you're looking at, as I just say, the amount of light you have it, so light abundance, the quality of natural light that you have it, so north facing versus south facing. For instance, north facing is where you get sun all day long, whereas south facing you don't get sun at all, and therefore they will affect your choice of what kind of color you want to use it. And what we recommend is always observe how the color react to the light in the actual environment during different times of the day, in the morning, midday, and in the evening, and as well as during summer and during winter and during spring and during autumn. That will give you a very good direction what kind of color your color scheme is going to made of what predominantly of which hue color. Again, natural bright space, there are two ways you can use it. One using a lots of neutral colors, so you open up your space in a very vibrant and natural way. Or you can take advantage of the amount of light and you need to cut it down. For instance, in a living room where you want to relax, then we might and we can use a very dark color to cut down the amount of light the space receive, and therefore a dark wall, it works quite nicely into this very luminous space. So if it's in a living room, a kitchen, we have a very luminous area. If it's in the kind of dining or living room, then we can even use a very middle tone or dark color to cut down the amount of light that we use in the space. Again, it's always a matter of balancing and testing and seeing how that actually works in the environment. Now, dark spaces, they are very problematic for us to resolve it. And occasionally, dark space, they look better when painted in dark color, but you might need to have your very light decoration to cut through that darkness or to contrast that darkness, almost like that dark room, it just create that sense of depth, of no end, and that's where occasionally a dark room painted in a dark color might work, although you need to balance it off with some neutral, warm, and light furniture and textiles to have a nice balance to it. And as well using a lamp light and a source of light to create that bright spot, to create that ambience, look and feel where you can kind of stay with it. And with this kind of close the session for tonight. Again, we got a bit overboard, and but we have seen the color has been used through the through how we actually look color through our psychology, how we actually feel it or perceive color on the color wheel. We have seen how the color scheme is applied in the real different spaces, and we are seeing how the color it actually manipulate the space in the different lighting condition, and it pretty much is our end of the session. So if you have any question, I'm happy to take them and see if you kind of have grasped it from the color theory that we had at last week's session to a bit more, let's see, in real practice how color affect the space. So welcome to any question if you have, Kate, Catherine, or Mercy.
I'm all good, thank you, Marco.
Okay, terrific.
I'm good too, thank you.
Okay, terrific. So, okay, I encourage you to just review the slide that we're going to upload it, and I will really would like to see, what we kind of went through tonight. Have a look at it in the discussion board and post your plays that you have looked at it. And again, if you have question about your commercial space that you want to propose, just shoot me an email. I'm happy to review it. Like for instance, Kate this evening has mentioned, it was a really good question. Thanks for putting it forward. And let's catch up on the forum if there is no question for tonight's session. And it was great to see you, everyone, joining for week number 2. Look at the color exploration in more in depth. And I'll see you everyone on Monday for the next session. And great seeing you again online. Thank you for your time. I hope you enjoy the session and enjoy your weekend. Bye, everyone.
Thank you
very much.
Happy Valentine's Day, everyone. Be healthy. Bye.